When Brigham Young beheld the Salt Lake Valley for the first time from the mouth of Emigration Canyon, he said, "This is the place." A fellow LDS pioneer in his company that day, July 24th, 1847, was great-great-grandfather to the man whose memory we honor today, my father, Clyde Melvin Aikens. During Mel's long cognitive decline, my mother Alice cared for him at home. He spent the last 3 days of his 87 years at Pete Moore Hospice House in Eugene, Oregon, where he died peacefully on April 23rd. Mel was the last surviving member of his nuclear family, which consisted of his father Clyde, his mother Claudia, his older brother Jim, and his younger brother Terry. This place of interment is in Cottonwood Heights, about 50 miles north of here, in Ogden, where Mel was born. He enjoyed climbing the cottonwood tree behind the house the men in his family built at 1903 Eccles Avenue. Perhaps that cottonwood tree was the perch from which he first gazed out to imagine possibilities greater than he could see. Mel loved his high school auto mechanics class, and during his final year at Weber College, his Uncle Jack, a contractor, offered him a job as his business manager. Instead, Mel went to the University of Utah, where he majored in anthropology and met Alice, a fellow student who was also a part-time secretary to Mel's mentor. He continued working, as he had since receiving his driver's license, as a substitute truck driver for the Model Laundry, which employed his father and his Uncle Harold. This is the place where Alice's parents, Frank and Yoshko, bought plots for themselves, their 3 children, and their children's spouses. Mel was fond of his in-laws and was the first non-Japanese to marry into Alice's family. My parents would have married in Utah, but for its prohibition on interracial unions. Instead, a Cook County judge married them in between the master's and PhD degrees Mel received from the University of Chicago. Quinn and I were both born at the LDS hospital 2 years apart. My birth went smoothly. My younger brother's birth was fraught. Mel donated blood and recruited relatives to do the same, so that the Aikens family squared up with the 6 pints of blood Alice lost. After 2 years at the University of Nevada, Reno, Mel was hired by the University of Oregon, where he would spend the rest of his career and develop a keen interest in Japanese, Korean, Chinese, and Russian archaeology. Accompanied by his family, Mel spent his first sabbatical learning Japanese in Kyoto, Japan. A frequent occurrence involved someone approaching the 4 of us and addressing Alice in Japanese. She would redirect the inquiry to Mel, whose skill with Japanese would leave the person slack-jawed in astonishment. The 4 of us returned to Kyoto for Mel's second sabbatical. His chief aim this time, in preparation for writing an English language book on Japanese prehistory, was to gather the latest research. Armed with a stack of his sponsor's business cards on which were written notes of introduction, Mel headed north, visiting archaeologists in 11 cities. At his lodgings, maids inquired as to his final destination. When he told them Abashiri, they would cover their mouths and snicker. After this happened a few times, he asked why. Abashiri, was home to the prison that once housed rebellious samurai. Mel was bound for the Japanese Alcatraz. 2 summers ago, to satisfy Mel's desire to revisit a site he last excavated 56 years earlier, Quinn organized a road trip to Hog-Up Cave. The cave lies at the southern end of the Hog-Up Mountains, 177 miles west of this place. Mel's defense of his work at Hog-Up Cave won him the Great Basin archaeologist position at the University of Oregon. Accompanied by Alice, Quinn, my wife Shireen, and me, and aided by his trekking poles, Mel struggled uphill toward the mouth of the cave. The ground was uneven and his spine was shot. Unable to continue, he sat on a large rock. For Mel, to see the cave was to reach the cave. This is the time, and this is the place, to consider not what Mel thought of himself, but what he did for others. Mel chaired the PhD dissertation committees for 39 students. Hattie Cryer, a long-serving member of Mel's staff at the Museum of Natural and Cultural History, said, "Each student he talks to, it's like they're his only student. I've never met anybody who didn't like him. Never." What did Mel do for me? For 12 days when I was 21, he let me play the role of apprentice archaeologist at Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. And 3 years ago, this July, he officiated Shireen's and my wedding, warmly welcoming her, Riley, and Mylin into the family. What did Mel do for Quinn? He was a loving Lolo grandfather to Quinn's daughter, Nikki. And he took the experience of being Quinn's passenger on the Alaska Highway, sliding sideways toward a steep embankment at 100 miles an hour, and memorialized it as his favorite story. And what did Mel do for Alice? 32 years into their 63-year marriage, he finally impressed her by winning something called the Earl A. Childs Award, because it came with a $7,000 cash prize. A final thing that Mel, even in death, has done for others is to gather us together here. If Mel is meant to have a homecoming, then this is the place.